Hey everybody, welcome. I am the AV teacher and class is in session. Hey everybody, welcome. Today we are talking about the exposure triangle. This is going to be a brief overview, maybe a reminder for you, or an intro if you've never really talked about it or thought about the exposure triangle before. But exposure is simply how bright or dark your image is, and that is controlled by three things that make up the exposure triangle: your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. And those three things work together to create a properly exposed image, hopefully. So first we're going to talk about the aperture. The aperture is simply the hole in the lens that lets the light in. You can make it smaller or you can make it larger. So obviously a larger opening lets more light in, a smaller opening lets less light in. So it is literally an opening or a hole in the lens that controls how much light is coming through. You make it bigger or smaller. That is the aperture. Measured in numbers like 2.8, 4, 5.6, numbers like that, those are called f-stops. And the smaller the number, the larger the opening. So it's opposite of what it sounds like, but the smaller the number, the larger the opening, the larger the number, the smaller the opening. All right, next we're going to talk about the shutter speed. The shutter speed is essentially how long that light goes through that opening and hits the sensor within the camera. So right now, I'm going to set my shutter speed. It is on 1/1000th of a second. It is very quick. I'm going to turn it down to 1/5 of a second. It is much slower. So it is controlling how long the light is allowed to enter into the camera. So again, it's very similar to the aperture. It is controlling how much light comes through as well. So a slow shutter speed allows a lot of light to come through. A very fast shutter speed only allows a little bit of light to come through. So on the exposure triangle, when you adjust one of these, you must compensate the other one to get your exposure correct. Now, the last part of the exposure triangle is the ISO. The ISO is simply how sensitive your camera is to light. Now you can get much more technical with it and sciencey with it and talk about gain and different things, but essentially it's how sensitive your camera is to light. So a lower number ISO, like a number of 100, means your camera is not very sensitive to light. It needs a lot of light to get an image. You set it to, say, 1600, it is much more sensitive to the light and you're going to have a brighter image. However, there is a penalty for turning your ISO up. With that higher number, you're going to get more noise or grain in your video, and it's not going to be quite as sharp an image. So those three work together: ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, to create a properly exposed image. You must compensate and adjust one when you adjust one of the others. Those three things work together to expose your image, and you look inside your viewfinder and you see your exposure meter. You adjust those to try to get that exposure meter basically in the middle. You'll see a line. That line moves as you make adjustments. You want to get that in the middle. Now that's just a guide. Maybe you like yours a little bit brighter, one click up, one click down, whatever. But just know those three things and know how to adjust that meter so you'll be on your way to having properly exposed and good looking images. We'll go into greater detail on these things next time. I'm the AV teacher. Class is dismissed.